Hello and welcome to another edition of the Wrap, your weekly look at state politics here in North Carolina. I'm Travis Fain, one of WRAL state government reporters.
And I am Will Doran, another WRAL state government reporter.
So that is two state government reporters, which is not quite enough to have a primary like some of the ones we've got going up here. Today was the last day of campaign filing for the 2024 elections. We got some crowded races. We got some not so crowded races. We're going to break down some of it, but I can just go ahead and tell everybody we ain't going to get to all of it. We don't talk about your race. Sorry, it wasn't important enough.
Most of these races are foregone conclusions. There are a handful that are pretty interesting, though. To me, it's the triangle one, the 13th district, replacing Wiley Nickel. There's 14, count them, 14 Republicans in that district. So I have a feeling we're headed to a runoff in that one. I don't think anyone's going to get more than 30% of the vote. Yeah,
that'd be a tough threshold. 14 is so many, and it's going to be a Republican district. So the winner of the primary is going to take that office. I was at the candidate filing, getting close to noon. I'm sitting there. Someone comes in. They're going through the rigmarole of filing. It takes a little while. They sit down near me. I'm like, "Oh, how are you? What you filing for? Congress? What district 13?" I was like, "Oh, okay. All right, keep it moving, buddy. You and who else?"
Yeah, one of those hundreds of people running for this one district.
That's right. So that's kind of emblematic in some ways of when you get an open seat, which this essentially is because of redistricting. Just everybody sees that opportunity, and once you're in Congress, you might stay there for quite some time. So
yeah, good opportunity.
Let's talk a little bit about the governor's race. 5 Democrats ended up filing. I've only heard of 2 of them. That's Attorney General Josh Stein and former Supreme Court Justice Michael Morgan, No surprise there. A little bit of a surprise on the Republican side, I guess. Former State Senator Andy Wells, who's now on the State Board of Transportation, he had announced some time ago he was running for governor as a Republican. He did not file, didn't return my calls either, so I don't know why.
I was going to say that I think that's a surprise to people who saw him announce his run for governor, but maybe not a surprise to people who have continued to follow coverage of the governor's race, because I've written half a dozen or more stories where I've called him for comment on something happening in the governor's race, and just crickets. So I'm not
sure. You can't be surprised if you never heard of somebody. So but Andy Wells is not running for governor anymore. That leaves Mark Robinson, the lieutenant governor, Bill Graham, and Dale Folwell in what I'm sure will be a drag out. Robinson filed on Thursday. I think he tried to stay under the radar, but there were reporters, including myself, up there.
You caught him anyways, Travis. No getting away from you.
It wasn't that hard. It was just kind of accidentally there. And he was a little under the weather, had much lower energy than usual for him, a raspy voice. But the upshot, he won't debate. He reiterated that he will not be engaging in debates. He's the front runner by a wide margin in polling. And just says, why would I give those guys the stage? So I imagine that's probably a good strategy for him.
Yeah, hasn't hurt Trump in the GOP presidential primary.
Has anything ever hurt him in the GOP presidential primary?
No.
I mean, I'm not getting into that. A little bit of a Cold War in the governor's race. Folwell is definitely in this thing, but this Robinson versus Bill Graham, a little bit of back and forth there. Robinson on Thursday called him an ambulance chaser. Bill Graham's a trial attorney. And you kind of see, Team Tillis, Senator Tom Tillis, his team is kind of behind Bill Graham, and Tillis has endorsed him.
Yeah, Tillis endorsed him. If you look at, who is staffing Bill Graham's campaign for governor, half of them are, former Tillis staffers or advisors, clearly, knew where to go to find his people. Meanwhile, on the other hand, you have our other Republican U.S. Senator, Ted Budd, has endorsed Mark Robinson. And this is, Ted Budd is very much more of kind of the MAGA wing of the party than Tom Tillis is. He's much more establishment. I've heard him refer to himself as a rhino before, kind of a positive way.
Been censured by the state party, Tillis has.
Yeah. For his support of gay marriage. He was censured earlier this year by the state party. So, you kind of have 2 sitting U.S. senators. You think, they're both Republicans. They agree on most things, everything. But, they're kind of backing different sides in this governor's race, and I think it's kind of emblematic of their different political philosophies overall.
Yeah, and where the Republican Party is, and how Mark Robinson has been kind of divisive for the Republican Party while still being kind of the runaway favorite. Although most polling shows something like 50% of people undecided. So, yeah, we'll see. The Lieutenant Governor, Mark Robinson, was at Mar-a-Lago Tuesday for a fundraiser with former President Trump. You may have seen the clip of Trump comparing Robinson's skills as an orator. Robinson is a great speech maker. I mean, I don't think anyone disagrees with that. Trump compared it, said he met him the first time and compared him, said, you know what, I think you might be better than Martin Luther King Jr., which, interesting, out of all the speech makers that the former president could have thought of in his head, his mind immediately went to Martin Luther King Jr. Gee, I wonder why.
Well, and, Mark Robinson's someone who said in the past that, we lost a lot of freedoms in the civil rights movement, and it wasn't necessarily positive. So I'm not sure that he necessarily appreciates the comparison.
He was a little bit sheepish about it when asked by reporters that, kind of like, of course, I, cannot fill the shoes of Martin Luther King Jr. That would be ridiculous. Not a big fan of the president saying that, but he's a big believer in me, so that's fine. And, we're going to keep it moving here. So,
yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of Trump, he endorsed Addison McDowell in the 6th Congressional District.
And if you're saying who,
right,
that's what we said too.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, Blue Cross lobbyist Addison McDowell. If you're around the General Assembly building, you might know Addison. He and his brother Chess are lobbyists. As I said, Addison for Blue Cross Blue Shield. But Trump picking him he had not even announced in this congressional race.
Right.
And Trump picked him over Bo Hines, who Trump had endorsed previously, 2 years ago.
Well, Trump got a little egg on his face from Bo Hines losing that race. I think probably in large part because of Trump's endorsement. I mean, Wiley Nickel made that a big part of his campaign that, hey, this is a Trumpy guy.
Well, yeah, I mean, Bo Hines is definitely a Trumpy guy. I mean, he's continuing to stand by Trump, and I'm going to out-Trump Trump, and I'm very Trump. Even though he's not getting the endorsement, he's making that clear. But I mean, Bo Hines is if you don't remember him, he's kind of moved around the state, announced a congressional run here, announced a congressional run there. He moved to the 13th district a year ago, back in 2022, to run that when he lost to Wiley Nickel, and now he's moved back to I assume he's moved back to the Triad area to run in the 6th district there. Also, former United States Representative Mark Walker is in that race. I think he served 3 terms in Congress in that general area. So I mean, the McDowell endorsement really hurts Hines. It doesn't help Mark Walker to have the Republican Party's most popular politician endorse someone else. But I wouldn't count Walker out. He's
yeah. I mean, he can point to his actual experience in Congress, and he didn't just kind of sit around up there. I mean, he was the head of the Republican Study Commission, which is one of the bigger GOP caucuses on Capitol Hill. There's someone who's respected by a lot of his colleagues. So, he doesn't need an endorsement to win a race. But yeah, it certainly doesn't help.
Yeah. Addison McDowell is a former staffer for, I believe, Congressman Richard Hudson and Senator Ted Budd. I think that's right. I know that his brother Chess is fairly tight with the Trump family. I think he and Don Jr. have been hunting before, and both the McDowell brothers were down at Mar-a-Lago Tuesday, obviously able to put a bug in the right ears and get that moving. But that's a blockbuster endorsement. I don't usually care about endorsements, but that one is obviously going to change that race.
Yeah, because whoever wins that GOP primary is going to Congress. There's not going to be a competitive general election there. In fact, I don't believe Democrats even fielded a candidate in that district.
Yeah, this is the redrawn 6th, which is right now, as we speak, Kathy Manning's district. She's a Democrat out of Greensboro. She's not running for re-election because she can't win in that district because of the way it's been redrawn.
And I don't believe any Democrat is running for that seat. So,
turning our attention to the General Assembly, good number of incumbents that are stepping away one reason or another. 15 in the House, 6 in the state Senate, per Brian Murphy, our colleague. 10 of those 21 leaving the General Assembly or seeking higher office. A couple of surprises this week. Mary Wills Bodie here in Wake County, a Democrat who is serving her first term in the 18th district, I believe. It's like northeastern Wake County, and then is it Granville
County? Which is where she's from.
There you go. She will not run again, and that's interesting because that's a swing district. That's a key district that Democrats have to defend if they have any hope of Republicans not maintaining a supermajority in the state Senate. And, I can't get her on the phone. Don't know exactly what's going on there. But Terrence Everett, who was going to retire from the House, in fact, said this week, hey, I'm not running for re-election in the House. I'm going to spend more time with my family. Well, Bodie declines to run for re-election. The governor calls Terrence Everett. Terrence Everett takes the call and is like, all right, yeah.
Guess I'm running for Senate now.
Guess I'm running for Senate now, and he is. The other kind of surprise, Republican Senator Jim Perry from down in Lenore County, he won't run for re-election. He's got a lot of stuff going on in his life. Can't make the time commitment, he says in a statement. There's nothing else going on there. That's certainly not that I'm aware of.
I mean, Perry is one of the most influential people in the legislature. I mean, he's, fairly high up in leadership, has a lot of his priorities become law, or at least, get hearings. He's, not a backbencher. So seeing him step down will definitely create a leadership void there that someone will need to step into.
Yeah, and I think Bodie and Perry probably both kind of up-and-comers. Perry had been there longer, but I mean, Bodie's family has been involved in North Carolina politics for a long time. So
yeah, well, and when Democrats saw that kind of swing district in 2022 and said we need a solid candidate to win this one, and in North Raleigh, she was recruited heavily to run for that district. So it's certainly interesting that she's not running again.
Yeah. I had a Republican strategist point out to me too. So we talk about swing districts. There's not that many of them. There are two in Wake County. One of them is Bodie's former district now that Everett will run in. And the other one is Lisa Grafstein, who we've talked about before, Senator Lisa Grafstein, who was double bunked in redistricting and moved so that she's going to run in a different district. Those are two districts that Democrats really have to win to have any hope of blocking Republican policy. And so Grafstein and Everett will be the two Democrats that Republicans have to wipe off the map here, as opposed to State Senator Sidney Batch, who is now running in a safe Democratic district, and Mary Wills Bodie, who was very popular and ran very strong. So it's a different dynamic. And Grafstein and Everett are both strong candidates. Don't get me wrong, but I think Republicans they're happy about that swap.
Yeah, well, and I don't think either of them has really run in a competitive district before. They've always had a safe seat.
It's different. It's different. No incumbent primaries for Senate Republicans, Brian Murphy tells us. There are three for Democrats. Those are Senators Woodard, Lowe, and Blue. The minority leader will face a...
Yeah, there had been a lot of chatter about a primary for Senate Leader Phil Berger, mostly because of his support of casinos. There had been rumors that, someone was floating a lot of money to take him on. But in the end, no takers for that. Sam Page, the Rockingham County Sheriff, had been kind of rumored as a potential, challenger of Berger's, but he ended up filing for lieutenant governor instead. So
yeah, which he had said back in May he was running for lieutenant governor, and then these rumors crop up, and a lot of bad blood over this because there was this entity and this anonymous poll that was released that showed, hey, Sam Page would wipe Berger off the map if he ran against him in Rockingham County. I don't know if I buy that or not. But Berger's campaign has now filed a complaint with the State Board of Elections saying, hey, how come this group that says it paid for this poll doesn't exist on paper, isn't registered anywhere? So that
some palace intrigue here.
Yeah, there's a lot of palace intrigue, and the supposedly millions promised for anybody who would run against Berger, but seemed to me like they came at the king and they missed. So you know what happens then. Anderson Clayton, the Democratic Party chair, tweeted on Thursday. So maybe we need a little preamble here. One of the things that Clayton has pushed for is to run a candidate, maybe not in every General Assembly district, maybe not contest every General Assembly district, but in lots of them, in more of them, more Democrats, more people in office Thursday night. So with 4 hours left in filing, once filing opens on Friday, tweets in all caps, does anyone know someone in Lee County, North Carolina that would be willing to put their name on the ballot? ? Exclamation point, ? Exclamation point. Oh, boy, when you're screaming on Twitter that you need a candidate in Lee County, I don't know that things are going great.
Well, and she had location turned on her tweets too, and it was sent from Washington, D.C., I noticed. So, looking for local candidates, but up in D.C. doing it.
Turn off the location on your tweets, everybody. So that, that's got. Did they end up getting a candidate for whatever Lee County, right? We should have checked.
I assume it's to run against John Sauls in the state house. I'm not sure. But yeah, we need to double check that.
The lieutenant governor's race. I'm going to go ahead and tell you now, your favorite story of the season's coming up here. Mark H. Robinson, the H is going to be important, filed to run for lieutenant governor. You might say, wait a minute, I thought Mark Robinson is the lieutenant governor, but he's running for governor. You're right, but that's Mark K. Robinson, the Republican lieutenant governor. This is Mark H. Robinson, a Sampson County Democrat who is running for lieutenant governor as a Democrat. So he'll face Senator Rachel Hunt and Senator Ben Clark. I don't know that it changes the dynamic of that race much. I don't know that Democrats are going to be confused in a way that makes them vote for a Mark Robinson in the lieutenant governor's race.
Yeah, he might have had more luck if he had changed his party affiliation to Republican, but
or maybe made his name not Mark Robinson. Like just add the not.
What is the H? Go by that.
He's a fascinating guy, though. He's had a long naval career. He's retired now. He's got an MBA. He owns a little cotton candy business, and he bought a secondhand bus that he named after his maternal grandmother, Bessie Murphy, and he has been on a 100-county tour. I wrote about him back in, I think it was July.
I remember you were very excited when you found this story.
It was just delightful, and he's delightful too, quite frankly. It's nice to talk to real people who are in politics. Not that the rest of y'all aren't. You're fine. But yeah, so I don't know what that's going to mean. Probably nothing. I think Rachel Hunt is probably the easy favorite. Governor Jim Hunt's daughter, state senator from Mecklenburg County. Ben Clark, former state senator. I mean, these are people with political chops. Robinson is seeking his first office. Asked, hey, are you worried about? Yeah, are you trying to copycat the lieutenant governor's name? Or he goes, well, I was born first. This is my name. He's named after me. On the Republican side of the lieutenant governor's race, the phone book is running. 10 people, I think, including Jim O'Neill, who ran for attorney general in 2020. 2020? Yeah.
Yeah, and 2016.
And 2016, and he filed late Thursday in the lieutenant governor's race. What are the council of state races do you want to talk about, Will?
There's a whole lot of them. I think that the auditor's race is going to be interesting because of just, the drama surrounding Beth Wood and her, inauspicious exit from office here. She just a couple hours ago pleaded guilty to a couple of misdemeanors for her use of state cars. And, I think she was a Democrat, but she'd been really well respected by both sides. And potentially for that reason, Republicans never tried too hard to get rid of her. But, we could see a renewed effort by the GOP to actually take that office this year and, grow their majority on the council of state.
Yeah, Jessica Holmes, the only Democratic candidate in that race. She was appointed by the governor to fill Wood's term, and I believe starts Saturday. I think so. Wood's resignation is good today. Same day she took that plea deal, and then Holmes goes in. There are 6 Republicans running for auditor. I'll let y'all sort that out. You get back to me on who's going to do that. Insurance, Senator Natasha Marcus is kind of the Democratic establishment candidate, I guess, there. So much so that David Wheeler, who's been running, David Wheeler, who started Muckrakers, the Fire Madison people. He came after Madison Coulter pretty successfully. Excuse me, y'all. He has been running for insurance commissioner. He was going to step away once Marcus got in, but he ended up filing too. So there's a primary on the Democratic side of Natasha Marcus and David Wheeler. Incumbent Republican Mike Causey in the insurance commissioner's race. He's facing former state representative Robert Brawley and Andrew Marcus, who I don't know a lot about, but I believe he is or was a firefighter.
Yeah, well, and, Causey has had a fairly contentious relationship with the state legislature. Obviously he's the one who wore a wire on the former head of the state Republican Party, so doesn't necessarily have a ton of fans in GOP leadership. But, I think the fact that a former state lawmaker is stepping in to primary him kind of underscores that testy relationship he's got.
I will say Brawley, though, has spent time in jail. Robert Brawley and some bail, but he got into it with Tillis and he's involved in this bail bonds. Brawley has run. He ran for governor a few years ago. He's not necessarily indicative of Republican thinking on some things.
Fair enough.
Labor. Charlotte City Councilman Braxton Winston, only Democrat, filed for the labor commissioner. So that's big for him.
Yeah.
He will be kind of the face of the party there. Republicans, they got 4 candidates. That includes Representative John Hardister and Luke Farley, whose slogan is "Make Elevators Great Again."
I saw his little daughter wearing a red MAGA-style "Make Elevators Great Again" hat when he came to file the other day. It was very cute.
Yeah, it's clever. Treasurer, We got Republicans A.J. Dowd. He's a frequent office seeker on the Republican side. Rachel Johnson, who I understand is former state superintendent of public instruction, Mark Johnson's wife. She's running for treasurer as a Republican. And Brad Briner, UNC trustee. I've heard that he's a Ray Martin and Jim Blaine candidate. They did not text me back when I asked, so that is now canon. On the Democratic side, it's Wesley Harris, State Representative Wesley Harris running for treasurer, and Gabe Esparza, who I had not heard of, but based on his website, it's a clean-looking website, successful businessman, and is very proud of and like very forward with his family's immigration story. They, I don't know what generation American he is, second line, whatever, but it seems like a cool story. So there will be, it looks like a primary there in both those.
Yeah, I think that'll be pretty competitive. One thing that was not competitive, kind of moving away from the political sphere, was the UNC news. Kevin Guskiewicz leaves as chancellor, and there was really no doubt, I think, in a lot of people's mind in who was going to get named to replace him, at least in the interim here. It's not officially full-time yet, but former state budget director Lee Roberts is going to take over, at least in the interim. I mean, his name was leaked out weeks ago, I feel like, long before, Guskiewicz's departure was even official. And so that, he's clearly being set up as the long-term guy, I believe.
Yeah, and I don't have any inside knowledge on this. I mean, I don't know that it's a good thing, though, that the Chronicle of Higher Education knew who the interim was going to be before Guskiewicz left. Y'all might want to pretend that you were thinking about it for a little longer.
Holden Thorpe gave an interview on this and, kind of talked about how he was pretty disappointed with both the Board of Trustees and the Board of Governors for UNC, both the system and Chapel Hill. He thinks that there have been far too many leaks and it's not running nearly professionally enough. Obviously, they were, same ones who had him step aside several years ago in the wake of the football scandal at UNC. But he termed himself a survivor of his relationship with the General Assembly and the board members they appoint.
Yeah, I mean, those jobs pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Survival is relative. Lee Roberts, who's, as you said, now the chancellor interim, is Governor Pat McCrory's budget director at one point. He wealthy investor guy, too, on the Board of Governors now. I didn't know this till today. Did you tell me this? His mother was Cokie Roberts, the longtime television and NPR journalist?
That's correct, yeah. And his grandfather was Hale Boggs, the former U.S. House Majority Leader. So he, comes from kind of a pretty famous, powerful family in Southern politics.
And you talked to former Governor McCrory about him, and he backed the choice, said good choice, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he just sang his praises. Another interesting thing he told me, so Lee Roberts was his budget director in his administration. But what McCrory told me is, I don't think we ever once talked about politics. He was just a pure numbers guy. He just wanted to come in, talk about the budget, talk about the minutia, didn't really care about, how things hit politically, just, wanted to talk numbers. Now, that's years removed here. And, we're hearing it from a pro-Roberts guy, who's trying to, kind of, I think, assuage some fears of, the more liberal, faculty at UNC. But, he really pitched him as an apolitical guy. And he told me, that even though one of the main, I think, criticisms that folks at UNC and elsewhere have against Lee Roberts is that he has really no experience in higher ed, McCrory said, look, I don't think that our big $2 billion bond from 2016, people remember that, the Connect NC bond, when voters approved $2 billion for repairs and, new construction on UNC campuses. He said, I don't think that would have happened without Lee Roberts, just because of the work that he did to basically convince Republican legislators to go along with it and put it on the ballot in the first place. And, he said he had done some work also to kind of modernize how the UNC system applies for grants to try to be more competitive with places like Harvard and MIT. So he kind of pushed back on this thinking that he doesn't have any experience in higher ed. He said, look, he was the budget director of the state government. Of course, he knows how universities work.
Absolutely. All right, we'll run through a few quick things real quick. I guess that's redundant. Chief Justice Paul Newby appointed Wake County District Court Judge Margaret Eagles to serve as Chief District Court Judge for Wake County. That's effective February 1st. She's filling a vacancy left by Chief District Court Judge Ned Mangum, who's retiring. You have our weekly Anita Earls, Supreme Court Justice Anita Earls update, Will?
Yeah, she has not had any luck in her attempt to stop this ethics investigation into her. For people who are unfamiliar, she's facing an investigation by the Judicial Standards Commission for basically harming public trust in the courts.
Well, saying too many things about like racism in the courts.
Correct.
And supposedly being too political. Saying things that I think a lot of people say out loud and think, but because she's a judge, some people, Republicans, think she's not supposed to say it.
Correct. Yeah. So she is the only black person, including the only black woman on the state Supreme Court, and she has said that she has experienced potential issues of racism, sexism, and also just kind of being disrespected for her political beliefs. She's a Democrat on a Republican majority court, and she said that she thinks sometimes the Republicans vote based more on their politics than on their on the law. And that's something that got said about her plenty of times as well, when she was in the majority and Democrats were in the majority. But now she's being investigated for this. She has been trying to get courts to stop this investigation, saying it's a First Amendment violation. But she lost that argument at the trial court level, took it to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, and has now lost there as well.
Yeah, trying to stop it, saying it's a First Amendment issue and it's going to continue. And it could, potentially she could be removed. I'd be kind of shocked if that's what happens out of this investigation, but
we'll see. There was a kind of a famous event several years ago where Paul Newby was speaking to a GOP group at some fundraiser, and there was leaked audio that made its way to WRAL in which he'd said that he was so worried by Anita Earls being elected to office that he even lost sleep over it at night. So and a lot of people think that Paul Newby is pushing for this investigation. Now, no one knows that for sure. Paul Newby has declined all of my interview requests, and it's confidential who has actually asked for this investigation. But if they do find negatively against her, the full Supreme Court would take a vote basically on what to do about her, and it could just be tell her in private, "Hey, cut it out," or it could be actually kick her off the bench.
Obviously, a weighty issue there. I want to recommend a story our colleague Laura Leslie did this week about a chandelier at the governor's mansion. So it was made in the 1880s in Austria. It may have been one of the very first electrified chandeliers in the world. It was built in collaboration with Thomas Edison. A woman named Caroline Horowitz, who was a Holocaust refugee, settled with her family in Murphy, North Carolina, donated the chandelier to the state in the 1960s as a thank you because the state welcomed them. She was very thankful to North Carolina. So that's been hanging in the governor's mansion for decades, I guess. And some of this was known, but it got some attention this week because the state apparently discovered a cache of letters that shed more light on obviously what this family went through to escape Germany, or I'm not sure if it was Germany, but Europe during the Holocaust. It's a great story. Laura Leslie had it. Just if you Google WRAL Governor Chandelier, I bet that makes it pop up. I also want to recommend a story that we didn't do. I read it in Reuters, but it got coverage in a number of places. It's about a phone banking AI called Ashley, and it can make thousands of campaign calls all at once and engage people in conversation where it describes the candidate's position. There's a congressional candidate in Pennsylvania using it. I guarantee you that will proliferate. You will see that. Maybe you'll see it in North Carolina this cycle. It certainly wouldn't surprise me. Obviously, with AI, it's always a bit of a concern. Like, what is this going to convince people of? The story kind of gets into, well, what if a foreign power had an AI that robocalling Americans and convincing them of any number of things? Now, we all know no Americans out of the 380 million of us would fall victim.
Of course not.
To some sort of phone scam where a computer convinces us of something. Come on. Here's a quote from Sam Altman in the story. He's the CEO of OpenAI. Quote, I expect AI to be capable of superhuman persuasion well before it is superhuman at general intelligence, which may lead to some very strange outcomes. Cool. Should be fun.
I'm interested just kind of on a tangent of, deep fake videos, as these elections go on. We've already seen them a few years ago. And with the rise of AI too, I've seen some people will tweet like movie scenes of, Jack Nicholson's famous scene in Thin Red Line where he's like, I ordered the code red, but, with completely different dialogue transposed over, but that sounds like his voice and sounds like Tom Cruise's voice.
A Few Good Men is the name of the movie. I think you got the movie.
Did I say the wrong movie? Yeah, thank you. But like what you can do with that with political candidates, I think is going to be just honestly really bad.
Yeah, I think we are sadly coming to a place where you cannot believe even what you see, and the truth gets its pants on, and the time a lie makes it around the world. So
yeah, well, thank you for the movie correction.
Yeah. You're never going to get over that, I know. One last thing to recommend. Governor Roy Cooper sat down for an end-of-year interview with our own Deborah Morgan, looking back on his year, looking ahead to the final year in his 2 terms. That's, he does those interviews at the end of the year every year. So recommend that to you. If you look on our website, you ought to find it. That's all I've got, Will.
That's all I got. I'm not going to misquote any other movies, so I'm just going to stop while I'm ahead.
Would you like to bring up another movie, and I'll purposely get something wrong about it, and then you can correct me on it?
No, let's just let people go and enjoy their days.
All right, everybody. We hope you're having a pleasant time in this holiday season.